Those were Serena's words. Sharp, casual, tossed across the dining room like I was a stray dog. My own daughter-in-law seated at the head of my table with my porcelain dishes, while I stood there, apron still damp, hands trembling. My son, Caleb, said nothing. Just reached for the mashed potatoes like nothing had happened. I felt my stomach clench, not from hunger, but from shame. If you've ever been disrespected by someone you love, this story will speak to your heart. I had cooked for hours, the roast, the green beans with almonds, the cornbread, everything Serena liked, because it was her birthday, and I wanted to keep peace in my son's home. I thought maybe, if I tried hard enough, she'd accept me. I was wrong. Serena laughed, sipping from the crystal glass that used to be mine. "Irene, why are you still standing there? You can go now. We'll call if we need anything." I opened my mouth, not to argue, but maybe just to ask for a chair. But Caleb looked away, like my presence embarrassed him. So I turned, quietly, and walked back into the kitchen. I sat by the sink on the old stool they didn't throw out yet and waited for scraps. I stared at the ticking clock, each second louder than the last. And the plate I had set aside for myself? Cold, untouched. The next morning I woke before the sun. As always, I moved quietly, the way you do when your presence has become unwelcome. I tiptoed past the closed bedroom doors, careful not to wake anyone. I wasn't a guest in this house. I was a ghost in it. In the kitchen, I opened the bottom drawer, the one Serena never checked. Inside, beneath a stack of old linens, was the photograph, the only one I kept near me now. It was taken the day Caleb graduated college. He had his arm around me, eyes bright, proud. That was before he met her, before his voice hardened, before Mom turned into Irene. I touched his face in the photo and whispered, "You used to love me." The teapot whistled. I poured just enough for myself. I didn't want to waste anything. Serena had started counting the groceries. "We go through milk too fast," she'd said last week. I'd stopped drinking it. As I sipped, I heard footsteps upstairs. Serena's laugh followed, light, full of something I couldn't reach. Caleb said something back and she laughed again, louder. I waited until they passed the kitchen, avoiding their eyes like always. They didn't stop. They never did. But that day, I didn't put the photograph back in the drawer. I kept it with me, tucked into my sweater pocket, close to my heart. A quiet rebellion. A reminder that once I was someone's whole world. Later that day, I was wiping down the kitchen counter when Serena walked in, heels clicking like punctuation marks. She didn't greet me. She never did. Instead, she opened the dishwasher, pulled out a plate, and held it up like evidence. "Did you use a metal scrub on this?" she asked, her tone sweetened with venom. I looked at the plate. There was a faint scratch, barely visible unless you were searching for fault. I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, she sighed. Loudly. "Honestly, Irene, this is why I don't like you touching our things." Our things. My hands tightened around the cloth in my hand. That set of dishes, a wedding gift I had bought for them. I'd stood in line at the department store, proud, smiling, imagining their joy. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She placed the plate down with dramatic care, like it might shatter from my breath alone. "Sorry doesn't fix it." Caleb came in just then, phone in hand, half listening. "Everything okay?" Serena turned to him, her voice instantly soft. "Just a little accident. Your mom's not used to nicer things, that's all." He chuckled, and kissed her on the cheek. I stood there, a bystander in my son's home, and I realized something cruel. I wasn't just invisible. I was inconvenient. I swallowed the heat rising in my chest, because reacting only gave her more power. But I didn't forget. I never forgot. That evening I stayed in the laundry room longer than I needed to. The hum of the dryer was the only sound that didn't judge me. I folded each towel slowly, pressing the edges flat, just to feel like I still had a purpose. Just to prove To myself, maybe, that I wasn't useless. The room smelled like fabric softener and old tears. On the shelf above the detergent, I kept a small candle, vanilla and sandalwood. I wasn't allowed to light it anymore. Serena said it gave her migraines. Still, I uncapped it sometimes and inhaled, just for a second, like I was stealing something sacred. I sat down on the wooden stool next to the laundry basket and rested my back against the wall. The quiet was heavy, but inside it I could finally hear myself think. That's when I heard Serena's voice, faint through the door. "She just lingers, like a stain," she said, laughing softly. "If she weren't his mother, I'd ask her to go." Then Caleb's voice, lower. "She won't be here forever, just be patient." My chest didn't heave. My eyes didn't well. I just froze. She won't be here forever. I suppose they thought that was kindness, waiting me out. Like time would do the work they were too cowardly to finish. I looked down at my hands. The same hands that once held Caleb when he had fevers, when he cried over scraped knees. Now I used them to fold towels I wasn't even thanked for. My birthday came on a Tuesday. No one remembered. I didn't expect balloons or cake, but I thought maybe a card, a small gesture, even just a "Happy birthday, Mom." But the morning came and went with nothing. Serena asked me to vacuum the stairs. Caleb left early for work without even a glance. I didn't say a word. After lunch, I walked to the back porch, carrying the same cup of tea I made every afternoon. I sat in the old wicker chair that creaked with my weight, and I looked out at the garden I once tended. The roses were overgrown now, the soil dry. No one noticed. In my lap, I held a small book of Psalms, a gift from my late husband. The spine was warm, the pages soft from years of turning. I read quietly, whispering the verses like prayers I no longer expected answers to. Then I opened my palm. In it was a small, round locket, my mother's. Inside, a photo of Caleb as a boy, smiling, his front teeth missing. I hadn't shown it to him in years. I wasn't sure he'd care. The wind picked up. A single yellow leaf floated down and landed near my foot. Another year gone. I didn't cry. I'd learned not to waste tears on forgetting. But I pressed the locket to my heart just for a moment. That night, when Serena served dinner, she passed me a plate without a word. No candle, no mention, no eye contact. Just silence, the loudest kind. The weather turned colder by midweek. I noticed it in my joints first, a dull ache that settled into my knees and knuckles. I fetched the old space heater from the garage, only to find it gone. Serena must have tossed it, said it was too ugly for the house. I didn't ask. Instead, I went to the hallway closet. I knew what I was looking for. Caleb's old wool coat. Brown, frayed at the cuffs, but warm. He hadn't worn it in years. Back when he still lived with me before law school, before Serena. I pulled it out and held it close. It smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. I wrapped it around myself and sat near the kitchen window, pretending it was his arms, pretending I was still needed. That's when Serena walked in. She stopped, frowned. "Why are you wearing that?" "It's cold," I said simply. She crossed her arms. "That coat is ancient. Honestly, Irene, have some dignity." She didn't know how much dignity I'd already swallowed, how much I'd buried just to stay. I didn't answer. I just pulled it tighter. That coat had once belonged to a boy who ran into my arms after school, who cried when I was sick, who kissed my forehead before bedtime. Now he let his wife belittle me in the house I once helped pay for. Later that evening, I folded the coat neatly and placed it under my pillow. A quiet reminder of the love that once lived here, even if it was no longer welcome. That Sunday, I decided to open the attic. Not for any real reason. Maybe just to feel close to something untouched. I had to ask Serena for the key. It used to hang beside the pantry, but she'd moved it months ago. Too cluttered, she'd said. Like memories were messes. She handed it over like it might stain her fingers. "Don't break anything up there." I don't have time to clean your accidents." "I won't," I murmured, wrapping my sweater tighter. The metal was cold in my hand, colder than the October air. I climbed the creaking stairs and opened the attic door. Dust swirled in the beam of light from the window. It smelled like old wood, paper, and years gone still. There were boxes with labels in my handwriting. Caleb, baby clothes, Mom's letters, kitchen china. I sat on the floor and opened one. Inside, a small quilt I'd stitched when Caleb was born. Tiny ducks in faded blue. I touched it softly, the way one touches something sacred. That's when I saw it, the small wooden jewelry box. Inside, my wedding ring and a note my husband once wrote. Just 3 words, "You're my home." I held it like a lifeline. Downstairs, I heard Serena's voice calling Caleb. Her laughter echoed up through the floorboards, too loud, too forced. But in that attic, holding that ring, I didn't feel small. I felt remembered, if only by the man who no longer walked this earth. I stayed up there until the light began to fade. Monday morning, I opened the fridge and paused. The milk was gone, again. It was the 3rd time in a week. I used to pour just a splash into my tea. Not enough to notice, I thought. But Serena had noticed. She always noticed. She walked in, hair still wrapped in a silk scarf, and spotted the empty teacup on the counter. "If you need something, Irene, ask. Don't just take." "It was just a little milk," I said, soft. She shut the fridge with a loud thud. "That's not the point. It's about respect." Respect. The word echoed inside me like a cruel joke. "I raised your husband," I said carefully. "I've given my whole life to this family." She turned slowly. "And that entitles you to what exactly?" My hands trembled. Not from fear, from the sharpness of the moment, the cut of her voice, the fact that she truly believed I was a burden to justify. Caleb walked in mid-tension, tie half knotted. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Serena said quickly. "Your mother's just being sensitive." He looked at me, not angry, just tired. "Mom, maybe ease up a bit, yeah? Things are already stressful." I didn't argue. I picked up my cup and walked away. But inside, a part of me cracked. Not from the milk, not from the silence, but from the realization that my son had stopped listening to the sound of my voice and started listening only to hers. I was scrubbing the upstairs bathroom. Serena had said the tiles looked grimy. On my knees, cloth in hand, I cleaned every corner, letting the lemon scent cover the sting of my pride. The silence in the house should have brought me peace. Instead, it sharpened every small noise, like life was whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. That's when I heard them. Serena and Caleb just outside in the hallway. "I can't live like this forever," she said, her voice low but clear. "She's always here lurking. It's suffocating." "She's my mother," Caleb said softer. "She has nowhere else to go." "Then find her somewhere," Serena snapped. "A retirement place, a little apartment, I don't care. I married you, not her." I froze, hands still wet, cloth dangling from my fingers. "She raised me," Caleb murmured. "For what? So she could hang that over our heads until she dies?" There was silence, a silence thicker than any insult. My knees hurt, but I didn't move. Not yet. I let their words fill the room like steam, curling around my spine, seeping into my skin. I didn't cry. I pressed the cloth into the tiles harder, as if I could scrub their cruelty off me. I had always believed that being a mother meant sacrifice, but no one tells you that sometimes even your sacrifices get erased. And in that upstairs bathroom, I felt it, the slow erasing of who I had been. That night, after they went out for dinner, just the 2 of them, of course, I went to my room early. My bones were tired, but my heart more so. I reached under the pillow and pulled out Caleb's old coat again, draping it over my lap like a blanket. I slid my hand into the inside pocket, half expecting dust and lint. But instead, I felt paper. Curious, I pulled it out. A folded letter, edges yellowed with time. My heart beat faster. I hadn't seen this in years. It was my handwriting. I recognized it instantly. The letter I'd slipped into his suitcase the day he left for college. I never knew if he'd read it. I had poured myself into those lines. Every fear, every pride, every ounce of motherly love I hadn't managed to say out loud. My dearest Caleb, if you ever feel lost, know this: you are loved always. Not for your grades or your success, just for being you, my son, my heart. Love, Mom. I stared at the letter, hands trembling. He had kept it all these years. Something inside me softened, then broke. He had remembered once. Before the noise, before the coldness that Serena draped over our home like a curtain, I folded the letter back carefully, held it to my chest, and whispered, "Come back to me, not just into the room, but back to the boy who used to believe I was his safe place." The next morning, while clearing the breakfast table, I noticed it missing. The small silver spoon, the one with the rose handle. My mother gave it to me when I married. I'd used it for my tea every morning, even here, even when everything else had been taken or boxed away. I searched the drawer, then the sink, then the dishwasher. Nothing. "Serena," I asked gently, "have you seen my spoon? The silver one I always use." She barely looked up from her tablet. "Oh, that old thing, it was tarnished. I threw it out." My breath caught. "You... what?" She finally looked at me, her eyes flat. I didn't think it mattered. "It's just a spoon." It was never just a spoon. It was the last thing my mother gave me before dementia took her voice. She had wrapped it in lace and said, "Every morning, remember where you come from." "I would have cleaned it," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. Serena shrugged. "Next time, don't leave junk in shared spaces." She went back to her screen. I stood still, holding the empty teacup in my hand. Not even the clink of it placing it down made her look again. Later I went outside, sat by the overgrown roses, and cried for the spoon. But I wasn't crying over silver. I was crying for the layers, every small erasure, every quiet theft of my presence, of my history, of me. And I knew then something had to change. On Thursday afternoon, I stood in the hallway folding laundry when I heard them laughing in the living room. Not just a chuckle, full laughter, loud, unfiltered. The kind that used to live in my home when Caleb was young, when joy came easily. Now it felt like trespassing. "I swear, your mom reminds me of those creepy background characters in old horror movies," Serena said between gasps. "Serena," Caleb muttered, but not like he was upset. More like he wanted her to whisper instead. "Oh, come on," she continued. "She just appears, doesn't say anything, just folds things, stares at her tea like it's a long-lost lover." They both laughed again. I didn't breathe. I stood perfectly still, a sock in one hand, a towel in the other, heart thudding like it wanted to escape. I wasn't supposed to hear it. That's what made it worse. Cruelty behind doors feels heavier than cruelty to your face. It comes dipped in cowardice. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. The photo of Caleb and me still rested on the nightstand, frame slightly cracked, like time had bent it. I touched the glass, not to remember the boy, but to remind myself that I had once been someone to him. I could take mockery. I had taken worse. But that laugh, it stayed with me. Because in it, I heard the sound of someone who thought I had no more fight left in me. They were wrong. Friday morning, I woke up early, as usual, and decided to bake. Not for them. For me. I hadn't done it in years. But something in me ached for the ritual. The feel of flour on my fingers. The smell of butter and warmth. A memory I could control. I made biscuits, the way my mother taught me. Pinch of salt, cold butter, hands gentle, not rushed. The first tray burned. I forgot how different Serena's oven was. Too hot, too fast, like her. I pulled it out, fanned the smoke, opened the window. That's when Serena came in, robe tight, hair messy but still perfect. She wrinkled her nose. "What is that smell?" "I was baking," I said quietly, holding the tray with a towel. She glanced at the charred edges. "You've ruined the oven smell for the whole day. They're just a little overdone." She took one, bit into it, then spit it into a napkin, laughing. "God, Irene, are you trying to kill us with these?" I stood there, holding the towel like it could shield me. I had no reply, just the familiar heat behind my eyes. She tossed the napkin into the sink. "Maybe just stick to folding towels. It's what you're best at." And she walked out. I picked up one of the biscuits, broke it in half and placed it in my mouth. It was dry, ashy, but I chewed it. Not because it tasted good, but because it was mine. Burnt or not, it was the first thing I'd made for myself in years. That evening, when the house was finally quiet, I sat alone in the living room. Serena had gone to a dinner with friends, and Caleb stayed upstairs, buried in his office work. The silence wrapped around me like a worn blanket, thin but familiar. I saw the old CD player tucked behind a stack of cookbooks, dusty, almost forgotten. I reached for it. It was the one I used when Caleb was little. Every Sunday morning, I'd play music while we cleaned the house together. He used to dance around the living room in mismatched socks. I found the CD, Timeless Classics, Volume 2, the same one we loved. I pressed play. The first notes of Moon River filled the room, soft, faint, sweet like honey stirred into tea. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wasn't in Serena's house. I was back in our tiny apartment, Caleb spinning in circles, his laughter filling the walls, his small hand tugging mine. "Dance with me, Mama!" I let myself cry. Not the loud kind, just silent tears that slipped down like they'd been waiting years for permission. Then I heard footsteps. I turned, startled. Caleb stood there, leaning against the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You're playing that old thing?" he asked. I nodded. "It still works." He hesitated, then almost smiled. "I used to love that song." "Yes," I said. "You did." And for one fleeting second, I saw the boy again, just a flicker, before he turned and walked away. But I held that flicker close. The next morning, Serena asked if I could walk to the pharmacy for her. She was rushing, hair half curled, keys jingling, phone pressed to her cheek. "It's just a quick errand. They should have my prescription ready. Name's under Vaughn." I nodded. Of course I nodded. Even though my knees ached from the cold, even though it was a half-mile walk and the wind cut through my coat like needles. I didn't have a car. I wasn't trusted with the keys anymore. She didn't say thank you. She never did. The pharmacy clerk smiled at me kindly. "For Serena Vaughn." "Here you go, ma'am." She paused. "You must be her mother." I opened my mouth, then closed it. "Mother-in-law," I said gently. "Oh," she said, blinking. "Still, that's sweet of you." On the way back, the wind picked up. I clutched the paper bag like a prize, like proof I still had value in this world. When I walked through the door, Serena barely glanced at me. She took the bag, peeled it open, and muttered, "Took you long enough." She didn't ask how the walk was. She didn't notice the redness in my hands or the way I leaned on the wall for balance. Later, I overheard her telling Caleb, "Your mother enjoys little tasks like that. Makes her feel useful. Useful. Not loved. Not appreciated, just tolerated." I sat on the edge of my bed that night and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. I whispered, I was never meant to be furniture in their life. It was late, past 10, when I heard the click, not the usual creak of the house settling. A sharp, deliberate click. I stepped into the hallway and saw it. The guest bathroom door. Locked. From the outside. Odd. The guest bathroom was the one I used. Serena had insisted. Said it was easier that way, cleaner. Hers and Caleb's bathroom upstairs was off limits. I tried the handle. It wouldn't turn. I waited. In the morning, I asked Caleb softly, "Did someone lock the bathroom door?" He didn't look up from his toast. "No idea. Maybe it jammed." Serena sipped her smoothie. "Oh, I locked it. The plumber said we had some leaking tiles and I didn't want you using it until it's checked. But it worked fine yesterday." She shrugged. "Well, I decide what happens in this house, Irene, for everyone's safety." Safety. As if I were some kind of hazard. So where should I go? She didn't miss a beat. "There's a restroom at the gas station down the street. Open 24 hours. Caleb blinked, but said nothing. I nodded. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap. And I realized I no longer had a space of my own in this house. Not a drawer, not a shelf, not even a door. They had given me shelter, but they had taken away my dignity. And I understood, in that quiet room, that my presence here was no longer tolerated. It was being erased. Saturday afternoon, Serena hosted her brunch group. They arrived in pairs, manicured, perfumed, laughing in that polished way women do when they believe their lives are well arranged. I stayed out of sight, as usual, cleaning the kitchen and preparing fruit platters she would later claim as her own. From the hallway, I heard their voices. "I love what you've done with the place," one said. "So clean, so curated." Serena laughed. "Well, I try, though it's hard with Caleb's mother always around." "Oh no," the woman gasped. "She still lives here?" "Like a houseplant I can't get rid of," Serena said. "Except a houseplant doesn't sigh as much." Laughter. All of them. I stood frozen, a pear in one hand, a paring knife in the other. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. One of them asked, "Why don't you just send her to one of those homes? She'd make Caleb feel guilty. He's soft like that." Another said, "You're a saint for tolerating it." That word again. Tolerating. I placed the knife down gently, walked to the back door. I didn't cry. I just stood in the yard, near the dry roses, letting the sun hit my face. Inside, I heard Serena's laugh again, high and clear, like the chime of a bell that never rings for you. And I made a decision, not out of revenge, out of something deeper, older. A woman who has given everything eventually remembers what she's worth. That night, long after the guests left and the dishes were stacked high in the sink, I made a phone call. I hadn't dialed that number in years. Caleb's Aunt Ruth, my husband's sister, a woman with a sharp tongue and a sharper memory. She had always told me, "Irene, kindness is a gift, but silence? That's a prison." The phone rang twice before she answered. "Irene." Her voice was half disbelief, half warmth. "It's me," I said. My voice trembled, though I tried to steady it. "I just needed to hear a kind voice." Ruth exhaled slowly. "Tell me what they've done." I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because saying it aloud would make it real. I told her about Serena's words, the locked door, the spoiled meals, the laughter I wasn't meant to hear. There was silence on the other end, the kind that hums with rage. "Irene," she finally said, "you're not a servant. You're his mother. You built that boy. If he's forgotten, maybe it's time he remembers who raised him." Her words sank deep, not as comfort, but as awakening. "I don't want to hurt him," I whispered. "Then remind him of who you are. Sometimes truth hurts before it heals." I wiped my eyes, a quiet strength forming in my chest. Before hanging up, she added, "And Irene, keep every little thing that's yours, even if it's just your name." I nodded to the empty room. "I will." It was Caleb's birthday. I spent the afternoon roasting his favorite chicken, the one with rosemary and lemon, just like I used to make when he was little. The kitchen filled with the scent of memories, and for a brief moment, I let myself hope. I set the table carefully, ironed napkins, the good silverware, even lit a candle. One, just for him. They came home late. Serena burst in first, laughing. Caleb followed, holding a takeout bag. "We grabbed Thai on the way," he said casually, already passing the living room. My hands froze on the serving spoon. "But I cooked," I said quietly, stupidly. Serena glanced at the table, then at the food. "Oh, you didn't have to do all this," she said, already turning away. "We figured you'd be tired." Tired. Not thought of, not included, just dismissed. Caleb didn't even sit. "Looks good, Mom. Maybe tomorrow, yeah?" Then they disappeared upstairs, leaving laughter trailing like perfume in their wake. I stood there, surrounded by steam and silence, the chicken slowly cooling in its tray. The candle flickered, died, and something inside me, something old, something faithful, collapsed. I sat at the table alone, ate 2 bites. The rest I packed away neatly, not because they would eat it, but because I deserved to honor the work of my hands. That night, I didn't cry. I wrote something instead. Just 3 lines on a piece of paper folded once. "This house is no longer my home, but I remember who I am. You will too." The next morning, I didn't go down for breakfast. I stayed in my room, sipping cold tea, listening to the clinks and chatter from the kitchen below. Caleb's footsteps. Serena's voice rising and falling like usual. But no one came to check. No knock, no call. It wasn't defiance. It was a test. Would they notice my absence or only my usefulness? By noon, Serena finally appeared at my door. She didn't knock, just opened it and leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "Everything all right?" she asked in that tone that pretended to care. "I'm fine," I said. "Just staying out of the way." She nodded. "Suit yourself." No concern, no guilt. She closed the door behind her without waiting for a response. But what I hadn't expected, what shook me more, was that Caleb didn't come at all. Not even once. He'd always had a way of showing up with a bowl of soup, a question, a quiet, "You okay, Mom?" Even in the years when we lived miles apart. But that morning, nothing. I realized then, this was no accident. He had learned to stop looking for me, to let Serena lead his heart. And maybe I had taught him that by staying silent too long. I sat by the window, staring at the autumn leaves piling at the edge of the yard, and I whispered the hardest truth of all. He's no longer mine to reach. But I wasn't done being me. 2 days later, I placed a small cream-colored envelope on Caleb's desk. Not Serena's desk, his. Inside was a copy of the deed to the lake cabin, the one my husband and I bought 20 years ago. Back then, we called it the Quiet Place. It had no internet, no television, just creaking floorboards and a view that made you forget the world. The original deed was still in my name. I had kept it hidden all these years, tucked in an old book of recipes behind a card from Caleb's 4th birthday. Now I was ready to let it speak. The note I included was short. "You may have forgotten the sound of the lake, but it remembers you. Go if you want to remember me." I didn't sign it. He'd know. That afternoon, I saw him find it. He didn't say anything, just held the paper like it might dissolve. Serena came in, glanced over his shoulder. "What's that?" "Just something from my mom," he said, his voice quieter than usual. She tried to peek, but he folded it and tucked it into his pocket. A gesture so small, but it bloomed inside me like a second spring. For the first time in months, Caleb didn't ask me to explain. He just kept the envelope, and that told me more than words ever could. The lake cabin wasn't just a gift. It was a reminder of where he came from, of who still held the roots. That night, I heard Serena in the living room, drawers opening and closing with increasing force. Sharp, impatient sounds. A hunt. I stayed in my room, quiet, waiting. Finally, she knocked, not gently. "Irene." I opened the door. She stood there in silk pajamas, arms crossed. "Did you give Caleb something?" I met her gaze. "Why do you ask?" "Because he's distracted." Said he needs time to think, and he keeps pulling out old photo albums like we're in a memory museum. I said nothing. She stepped closer. I know you're trying to make him feel guilty. Whatever stunt you're pulling, it won't work. He's my husband now. This is our home. I nodded slowly. Yes, your home. She tilted her head, waiting for more. I didn't give it to her. Just before she turned away, I said softly, memories are powerful, Serena. Stronger than walls, stronger than silence. She froze, just for a second, then scoffed. Whatever game you're playing, it's pathetic. She walked off, heels tapping across the hardwood like punctuation marks of control. But her voice didn't linger in the air like it used to. It evaporated, because something had shifted. She felt it, that small tremble in the foundation, a threat not of anger but of presence. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't arguing. I was returning, piece by quiet piece, not to fight her, but to remind them both I was still here. While Serena was out running errands, I went into the guest bathroom, the one she'd locked a week ago. The key still sat on the top shelf of the pantry. She thought I wouldn't look there. She forgot I used to clean this entire house. I knew every corner. The door creaked open. Everything was untouched. My things still in place, my folded towels, my lavender soap. But it was the drawer by the sink that stopped me. I opened it slowly. There it was, my bracelet. Silver with a single pearl, worn from years of wear. A gift from my husband on our 20th anniversary. I hadn't seen it in weeks. I thought I'd lost it, but Serena had taken it, hid it. Maybe out of spite, maybe to prove she could. I picked it up, held it in my palm. My husband had once kissed my wrist after placing it there. You're my heart in this world, he'd whispered. That memory lived in the metal. I fastened it again, not just because it belonged to me, but because it reminded me who I used to be. Downstairs, the front door opened. Serena's voice floated in, full of practiced ease. I didn't panic. I didn't hide the bracelet. I stepped out of the bathroom, slowly, calmly. If she saw it on my wrist, so be it. She had stolen many things, but not this. Not my history. Not my right to wear love like armor. That evening, I was washing dishes when Caleb entered the kitchen alone. No phone, no laptop, just him. He leaned against the counter, watching me. I remember that bracelet, he said. I looked down at it, then back at him. You should. You helped pick it out. He smiled faintly, a memory softening his face. I was 10. Dad gave me $20 to put toward it. I was so proud. You told the jeweler I was the most beautiful mom in the world. He chuckled. Sounds like me. We stood there in a stillness that wasn't awkward, just long overdue. Then quieter, he added, I found your letter. In the coat. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I'd forgotten, he said, how much you did for me. How much of yourself you gave away. You didn't forget, I said gently. You just got distracted. He looked down, ashamed. I should have protected you better. The faucet dripped behind us. He didn't move to stop it. Neither did I. I let Serena shape the way I see you, he admitted. I didn't realize it until I saw the photos again. You were always there, holding everything together. I turned off the water and dried my hands slowly. I never asked for much, just a little space, a little respect. You'll have it, he said. Then almost to himself, things have to change. He left the kitchen quietly, but not before touching my shoulder, gently, like a son again, and I let it rest there, like a blessing returned. The next night, Caleb came home early. He set a bag of groceries on the counter and said, I thought I'd cook tonight. I blinked, startled. You? He smiled. You'll supervise, of course. And for the first time in years, we cooked side by side. He chopped onions, terribly. I stirred the sauce. He laughed when he cried from the onions, and I teased him gently, like I used to when he was a boy afraid of homework. There was no tension, no watching eyes. Serena was out with friends. It was just us. He set the table, and when I went to sit at the end, the chair I'd quietly claimed for months, he stopped me, pulled out the head chair, the one Serena always took. "You sit here," he said, and I did. The food wasn't perfect. The pasta was a little soft, but it was the best meal I'd had in years. Halfway through, he looked at me seriously. "I read Dad's note, too, the one in your jewelry box." My heart stilled. "You went into the attic?" He nodded. "The quiet place, remember?" I smiled. "Always. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything." I reached across the table, placed my hand over his. "You found your way back," I said. "That's enough." Outside, wind rustled the trees, but inside it was still, warm, a dinner without tension, a table with room for love again. And for one night, I felt like someone's mother, not someone's burden. The following morning, Caleb knocked on my door, not with hesitation, but respect. A small, deliberate sound. When I opened it, he held something in his hand, the bathroom key. "I told Serena I'm unlocking it," he said. "She wasn't happy." I didn't ask what she said, I could imagine. He placed the key in my palm, and for a moment I just stared at it. The tiny object felt heavier than it looked, not in weight, but in meaning. "I should have never allowed that," he added. "I saw it. I just didn't want to start another fight." I nodded slowly. "Sometimes silence feels safer." He met my eyes. "But silence made me lose sight of you." We stood in the hallway for a long second, that key sitting between us like a truce offering. "It's not about the bathroom," I said. "It's about having a door that opens when I need it." "I know." I curled my fingers around the key. And with that, something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet course correction. That evening I unlocked the door myself, ran a hot bath with lavender salts, lit the vanilla sandalwood candle Serena once said gave her migraines. The steam curled up around me like forgiveness. I sat there, soaking in warmth, not just from the water, but from the knowledge that dignity can return, even after long exile. Sometimes all it takes is one key placed back into your hands. 2 days later, the storm came, not from the sky, but from Serena. She burst into the kitchen, cheeks flushed, eyes flashing. Caleb had gone to the office. I was alone at the table folding napkins. "You've been whispering to him, haven't you?" She spat. I looked up calmly. "I've spoken with my son. That's all." She slammed a drawer shut. "You're poisoning him against me. Don't act innocent." "I don't need to poison anything, Serena. Truth has its own voice." Her mouth tightened. "Don't get smug. He still loves me. I never said he didn't." She paused, thrown off by my quiet. But I kept going, soft but firm. "He also remembers who he is, who raised him. That doesn't make you smaller, unless you try to erase it." She stepped closer. "This is my home. Don't forget that." I stood slowly. "Then why are you so afraid?" She blinked. That was the crack, the tremor. I didn't yell. I didn't match her rage. I simply walked past her, each step deliberate. She didn't follow, because deep down, she understood. Power built on fear crumbles when it meets quiet strength. Later that night, she didn't speak to Caleb, barely looked at him. But she didn't touch my things, didn't lock any more doors, didn't throw away the tea. And I knew then she wasn't in control anymore. Not because I took it from her, but because I reclaimed myself. The phone rang just after lunch. It was Mr. Delaney, my late husband's lawyer. His voice was warm, familiar, laced with something careful. "Mrs. Wallace, I've been going through the final revisions of your husband's trust. There's something you may want to know." I sat down, holding the receiver tight. "Go on." He cleared his throat. "The lake cabin. It wasn't just left to you. Your husband updated the documents 6 months before he passed. He named a secondary heir." I froze. "Who?" "Your grandson. If Caleb has a child, the cabin passes to them automatically." I didn't speak. The quiet stretched. Your husband said it was his way of keeping the memory alive, through blood, through roots. Tears stung my eyes. He never told me. He knew you'd protect it either way, Delaney said gently. But now, it has legacy. I hung up and stared out the window. Caleb and Serena didn't have children yet. But one day, maybe. And when they did, that place would belong to someone who had my blood. And my husband's love wrapped in cedar walls and lake winds. It was more than property. It was poetry. That afternoon, I wrote a note. Short. Folded it, placed it inside the drawer where Caleb kept his cufflinks. He thought of the future, not just yours, but ours. I didn't need to explain. The cabin now carried more than memories. It carried justice, gentle, silent, but firm. The next morning I went into the attic one last time. The light was soft, dust dancing like snowflakes in a forgotten ballet. I opened a worn box and pulled out the frame, the photograph of Caleb, age 7, covered in flour from head to toe, beaming beside me in the old kitchen. He had been trying to make pancakes. I let him ruin 3 batches before we got one right. That photo had lived on the hallway wall of our first home for years. I cleaned the glass, wiped the wooden frame, and carried it downstairs. Serena was in the living room. She looked up from her tablet as I passed, but didn't say a word. Caleb was out. I walked to the wall near the stairs, the one Serena had declared off-limits for family clutter. There was a spot, still blank. I drove in a small nail and hung the photo. She stood, eyebrows lifted. "You didn't ask." "No," I replied. "I didn't." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. Not with force, but with calm. "This is my family too," I said. "That's my son. That's my history. And it belongs here." She didn't argue, just stared at the photo, then turned and left the room. And there it hung, a 7-year-old boy covered in flour, his mother beside him laughing without fear. A memory made visible, a truth framed in wood, a piece of myself, back in the light. The following weekend, I was out tending to the roses. They were finally trimmed, watered, freed from the tangle of weeds. The thorns still bit at my fingers, but the petals, soft and stubborn, began to open again. I was kneeling by the flower bed when Mrs. Franklin, our next-door neighbor, walked up to the fence. We hadn't spoken in months. "Irene," she called gently. I stood slowly wiping my hands on my apron. "Hello, Ruth." She leaned on the post. "I've been meaning to say, the house feels different lately." "How so?" "Lighter," she said. "Quieter. I used to hear raised voices slamming doors, but lately, there's peace." I nodded, unsure what to say. She smiled softly. "I saw Caleb walking with you last evening. Looked like old times." "It's been better," I said. "I'm glad. You deserve better." I blinked at that, the kindness in it, the simple truth. Few people say such things to women like me, women who've aged into invisibility. Before she left, she added, "I still remember when you first moved in. You carried Caleb on your hip and planted tulips before unpacking boxes." I chuckled. "I thought flowers would make it feel like home." "Maybe they did," she said. "Maybe they still do." As she walked away, I looked at the blooms around me, the first full roses in years, red, open, unashamed. And I thought, even soil that's been neglected can bloom again if tended with patience. The neighbors saw the change, because I was no longer shrinking. I was growing back. It happened in passing, as so many truths do. Serena was on the phone in the foyer, pacing, her voice low but sharp. She didn't see me walking in from the garden. She thought she was alone. "No, I'm not losing control," she snapped. "He's just remembering things I didn't plan for." And now she's everywhere again. Her photo on the wall, her bracelet, her presence. She paused, listening. "Yes, of course I'm still in charge. But if Caleb keeps pulling away..." She turned suddenly and saw me standing there. We locked eyes. For the first time, her confidence wavered. just for a moment, like a glass that's been knocked slightly off balance, not broken yet, but trembling. I didn't flinch. I didn't retreat. I never left, I said softly. You just covered me up with silence. She hung up the call without saying goodbye and walked past me without a word. But her shoulders were tight, her steps stiff. She had always believed her power came from being heard, from controlling the conversation. But now, I didn't need to speak loudly to be felt. Caleb was seeing. The neighbors were noticing. And Serena was afraid, not of me, but of what returns when dignity walks back through the door without asking permission. I wasn't the ghost anymore. I was the shadow that reminds them. You cannot erase a woman who remembers who she is. The next morning, I reached into the cupboard and pulled out a mug I hadn't seen in months. White ceramic, a blue flower painted on the side, chipped slightly at the rim. It was mine, a gift from Caleb on Mother's Day when he was 13. He'd saved up his allowance, wrapped it in tissue paper, and wrote, "To the best cook and warmest heart." Serena had once called it ugly, then it vanished, and now, suddenly, it was back on the shelf. I turned it in my hands slowly, almost afraid it would disappear again. But there it was, real, solid mine. I made my tea and sat at the table. Caleb walked in, saw the mug, and smiled. "I found it stuffed in the garage cabinet," he said. "I thought you might want it back." I looked up at him. "Thank you." He sat across from me, quiet for a moment. "She's upset with me. Says I'm slipping away." I sipped slowly. "Are you? I think I'm waking up." I nodded. "That's different." We didn't speak for a while. The silence was gentle this time, not heavy, not tense. Just two people sitting with truth between them, and I thought, sometimes justice doesn't arrive with loud declarations. Sometimes it returns quietly, like a chipped mug placed back on a shelf, holding memories, love, and the weight of everything you thought had been lost. That morning, my tea tasted like belonging. That night, I placed a letter under Caleb's pillow, not to surprise him, not to stir guilt, but because I needed to leave something behind, something that spoke without asking to be heard. It was handwritten, no grand speeches, just truth. "My son, I don't need an apology. I just needed to know you still see me. I raised you with love, not to be owed, but to be remembered. Your kindness these past few days, it's more than I expected, and everything I needed." I didn't sign it with my name, just Mom, the way I used to sign notes in his lunchbox. I left it folded on his pillow, quiet, unassuming, like all the love I had poured into him, unseen over the years. The next morning it was gone. He didn't mention it. But when I came into the kitchen, I found the old photograph, the one from the attic, now framed on the counter. Me holding Caleb, both of us laughing, frosting on our noses. And beneath it, the bracelet I thought I'd lost, now resting gently on a folded napkin, a gesture, not loud, but loud enough for the heart. Serena passed by and said nothing, but I saw her glance at the photo, then at me. And for the first time, she looked unsure, because justice had come, not in anger, but in presence. And presence is what she could never erase. A week later, Caleb drove me to the lake cabin. He didn't say much on the way, just asked if I brought the key. I nodded and held it in my lap the whole ride, fingers curled around its brass handle like a relic. When we arrived, the cabin was exactly as I remembered. Dusty porch, faded wood, the wind whispering through pine like an old lullaby. Caleb stepped out of the car and just stared. "I forgot how quiet it is," he said. I smiled. That's why we called it the quiet place. Inside, everything was still intact. The checkered curtains, the worn armchair, the stack of books by the fireplace. It smelled like cedar and thyme, a scent that didn't ask for permission, only presence. We sat on the porch with mugs of coffee, mine in the chipped blue one. He brought it without asking. After a long silence, he said, "I want to come back here more often." "You should," I said. "I think Serena and I might need space." I looked at him but didn't pry. He wasn't asking for advice. He was making room for memory, for healing. "Your father built this with his bare hands," I said, "for all of us." "I know," he whispered. I watched the lake glisten beneath the fading sun, and I realized justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rocks gently in a porch chair. Sometimes it looks like a son returning to the place where love first taught him how to be whole. 3 days later, back at the house, Serena stood in the doorway of my room. No warning, just a knock, then her silhouette framed by light. She didn't come in. "I heard you and Caleb went to the cabin," she said, her tone flat. "Yes," I replied, folding a scarf. "It was peaceful." She crossed her arms. "You're changing things?" I met her gaze. "No, I'm remembering them." For a moment she said nothing, then, "He's pulling away from me. He's finding his way back to himself." She stepped forward, eyes sharper now. "You think you've won something, don't you?" I shook my head gently. "This isn't a contest, Serena. It's a life, and I've lived enough of it to know that what's true doesn't need to shout." She hesitated, and then her voice cracked, just slightly. "He looks at you differently now. He sees," I said softly. "That's all I ever wanted." Her face twisted, something caught between fear and resentment. Then she turned to go. But at the doorway she paused. I don't know who I am without control. I stayed silent, letting the weight of her confession settle between us. Then I said, "Maybe that's the beginning." She didn't reply, just walked away, slower than usual, shoulders lower, no heels clacking. For the first time, she wasn't fighting me. She was facing herself. And sometimes, that's the first mercy truth offers. Sunday morning arrived with light spilling through the windows. Soft, golden, uninvited, but welcome. I rose early. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I set the table. Not for them, for me. The linen cloth, the plates with the blue trim, the small vase with 2 fresh roses from the garden. Everything quiet, simple, honest. I made eggs, toast, fruit, brewed a pot of tea and placed it in the center. I used the mug, my mug. Then I sat. I didn't wait for Serena. I didn't wait for Caleb. I didn't ask for permission or acknowledgement. I claimed my place. Halfway through my meal, Caleb came down, hair tousled, eyes sleepy. He paused in the doorway. "You made breakfast?" "For myself," I said, "but you're welcome to join." He smiled, warm, unguarded. I'd like that. He sat, poured tea, buttered a slice of toast. No tension, no heaviness. Then a soft shuffle. Serena. She stood at the edge of the room, hands curled loosely at her sides. She didn't speak, but she didn't turn away either. I gestured gently. "There's still a seat." She blinked, surprised, but sat. And for the first time in what felt like forever, we shared a meal. No performance, no roles, just presence. Not peace, not yet, but the possibility of it. Because I hadn't demanded anything. I had simply set the table. And sometimes, dignity returns in the most ordinary way, by sitting down and refusing to be erased. That afternoon, I stepped into the laundry room, the one I used to hide in when silence felt safer than standing in plain view. There, folded neatly on the counter, was a fresh set of towels. On top, a note. Small, unpretentious. "Thank you for keeping things going, even when I didn't notice. Serena." No flowery words. No grand gesture. Just acknowledgement. I sat on the old stool, the same one where I used to cry with a cloth still damp in my hands. But this time, I didn't cry. I let the quiet surround me. Not like a cage, but like a room finally aired out. I turned the note over in my hands, read it again. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an erasure of what came before. But it was a seed, one that said, "I saw you," and maybe that was enough. Later, I placed the note inside the old jewelry box in the attic, next to my wedding ring, the letter from Caleb, the photo of flower-dusted laughter, because even small mercies deserve to be kept. When I came back down, Serena was folding laundry in the living room. She didn't speak. Neither did I. But when she handed me a towel, she didn't toss it. She passed it, gently with both hands. And for a woman like me, who had been dropped so many times, that was a kind of apology that didn't need to be spoken. The first rain of November came soft and steady. I sat by the front window, wrapped in Caleb's old coat, tea in hand, watching droplets race down the glass. It was the kind of morning made for remembering. That's when I heard it, a knock. Not the front door, my door. A gentle tap, followed by a pause. "Come in," I said. The door creaked open. Serena stood there, no makeup, damp from the rain, holding something wrapped in linen. She stepped in, placed it on the nightstand, and unwrapped it slowly. My silver spoon, the one she had thrown away, cleaned, polished, restored. "I found it in the bottom of a storage bin," she said softly. "I thought it was gone." I looked at it, then at her. It meant a lot to me. "I know," she whispered. She didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it like a prize, but I saw the effort. I saw the hands that returned what was broken. She turned to leave, then stopped. "Thank you for staying," she said. "Even when I made it hard." I reached out, touched her hand, brief, barely there, but it was enough. When she left, I picked up the spoon and placed it on my nightstand, beside the letter, the photo, the bracelet, all the things that had survived. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, a door had opened, not with noise, not with drama, just a soft creak and the decision to begin again. By the end of November, the roses were blooming again, late, unexpected, stubborn, like me. I was in the garden at dusk, wearing gloves and an old sweater, gently trimming the petals. The air was cool, the sky painted in pink and ash. Behind me, the porch light flicked on. Caleb stepped out with 2 cups of tea. "Your hands must be freezing," he said, handing one to me. "They've done worse in colder seasons," I replied with a small smile. He sat on the steps, legs stretched. "I've been thinking." I waited. "When Serena and I have a child, I want them to know you. Really know you. Not as a shadow in the hallway, as a story, as a presence." I sat beside him, quiet. He continued. "I want them to grow up with the smell of your pancakes, the sound of your voice reading at night. I want your strength in them." I looked at him. My son. No longer the boy who forgot, but the man who remembered. "Then tell them everything," I said. "Not just the easy parts." He nodded. "I will." The porch light hummed. The roses swayed. I took a deep breath and looked around. The house behind me, the soil beneath me, the light in front of me. Not everything was perfect, but dignity had been restored, and peace was no longer a stranger in my home. That night I sat alone in the living room, not in the corner, not by the shadows, but in the armchair by the window, the one Serena used to claim. The house was quiet. Caleb and Serena had gone to bed early. No tension lingered, just stillness, like a blanket freshly warmed. I lit a lamp beside me, soft, golden. The same one my husband and I bought at a yard sale 30 years ago. The switch stuck sometimes, but the glow had never failed me. I opened my Psalms book, the one I kept since he passed, read 3 lines, closed it. Then I looked around the room, at the photo on the wall, the spoon on the shelf, the sound of a home learning how to breathe again. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want control. I had returned as a mother, as a woman, as a presence no longer erased. I sipped the last of my tea and stood to go to bed, but I left the lamp on. Because for years I had lived in the dark corners of this house, dimmed by silence and small cruelties. Tonight, I wanted the light to stay, a small beacon, a quiet testament that Irene Wallace had not only endured, she had risen. And in the still of that night, with the lamp casting shadows against the wall, peace settled in like an old friend who finally found the door.